The air in the old manor house was thick with the scent of aged cedar and something else, something indefinably metallic and green, like distant rain on a forgotten forest floor. Elara, with her customary precision, knew it was the specific blend of antique furniture polish and the faint, almost imperceptible tang of the ancient iron gate that had creaked shut behind her. She moved through the hushed hall, her sensible heels barely disturbing the Persian rugs that silenced even the most determined sound. Her assignment was a fascinating one: to appraise and catalogue the forgotten library of the reclusive Lord Ashworth, a collection rumoured to hold texts untouched by human hand for centuries. For Elara, a scholar of lost languages and forgotten histories, this was less a job and more a pilgrimage. She lived for the whisper of parchment, the delicate crackle of vellum, the silent stories held within the faded ink. Her world was one of quiet contemplation, of intellectual pursuit, far removed from the clamour and superficiality of modern life. Yet, as she stepped into the grand dimly lit drawing room, where a small, intimate gathering was already underway, a subtle unease prickled at her skin. Lord Ashworth was nowhere to be seen, but the room was populated by a handful of figures, each as exquisitely tailored and subtly intimidating as the next. They spoke in hushed tones, their laughter like the chime of expensive crystal. Elara felt, as she often did, like a moth amongst butterflies, perhaps more resilient, but certainly less adorned. She found herself drawn to an alcove, where a series of illuminated manuscripts lay displayed under discreet spotlights, their colors glowing with an otherworldly luminescence. As she leaned closer, her breath held, a faint tremor ran through her. Not from the cold, nor from excitement, but from a sudden, almost magnetic awareness. A presence. Potent, silent, yet undeniably there. She didn't need to turn to know he was behind her. The scent of him arrived first, not the cedar, nor the rain metal, but something deeper, richer. Sandalwood, perhaps, intertwined with a hint of sea salt and something sharp, like a sliver of flint. It was a scent that spoke of ancient places and untamed desires. "They are beautiful, aren't they?" A voice, low and resonant, brushed against her ear, sending an involuntary shiver down her spine. It wasn't a question, but an observation, delivered with an intimacy that belied their stranger status. Elara slowly turned, her heart a drum against her ribs. He stood impossibly close, a shadow against the softer lamplight of the room. Taller than she had anticipated, with a lean, powerful build that was evident even beneath the impeccable cut of his dark suit. His face was a study in sharp angles and planes, dominated by eyes, the color of old amber, deep-set and intelligent, that seemed to absorb the light around them. A lock of dark hair fell across his brow, lending him a rakish charm that was at odds with the profound intensity of his gaze. "Exquisite," she managed, her voice a little breathier than she would have liked. She met his gaze, refusing to be intimidated, even as a powerful current of awareness sparked between them. It was a peculiar sensation, like recognizing a tune you'd never heard before, yet knew intimately. He offered a slow, almost imperceptible smile, a slight curve of his lips that hinted at a depth of amusement and perhaps something darker. "You look at them as if you understand their secrets, as if you've walked the same earth as the hands that penned them." Elara felt a flush creep up her neck. "It's my profession," she said, trying to regain a measure of professional composure. "I restore and translate. I try to understand the minds behind the texts." "And what do you find?" His eyes held hers, unwavering, probing. It felt less like a conversation and more like an interrogation, albeit one conducted with a dangerous, intoxicating charm. He didn't blink, didn't shift his weight. He was utterly still, utterly focused. "Humanity," she replied, finding her footing. Its enduring need to record, to remember, to believe in something beyond its own fleeting existence. He hummed, a low, thoughtful sound. "A noble pursuit. Most people are content with the fleeting." His gaze flickered to her hands, then back to her eyes. "My name is Vel, and you are?" "Elara Vance." She offered her hand and his closed around it. His touch was firm, warm, and unexpectedly electrifying. A jolt, like static electricity, arced between them, making the fine hairs on her arms stand on end. His fingers were long and strong, his skin smooth against hers. He didn't release her hand immediately, but held it, his thumb tracing a slow, deliberate circle on the back of her palm. The simple gesture was shockingly intimate, sending a wave of heat through her. Elara, he repeated, savoring the syllables. A name that evokes starlight and ancient wisdom. Fitting. His amber eyes seemed to pierce through her carefully constructed facade, seeing something she rarely showed to the world. She finally withdrew her hand, though the warmth of his touch lingered. I'm here to work on Lord Ashworth's library. Ah yes, the Ashworth collection, a treasure trove indeed. He paused, his gaze sweeping over her once more, lingering on her lips. I'm a patron of the arts, you could say, and a friend of Lord Ashworth. I often find myself here. Perhaps our paths were destined to cross over these venerable tomes. Perhaps, she murmured, a strange flutter in her stomach. Destiny was not a concept she typically entertained. She believed in hard work, empirical evidence, and the careful reconstruction of facts. Yet, the way he spoke, the way he looked at her, made her feel as if she had just stepped into a story. He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. The main hall is rather stifling, wouldn't you agree? All polite chatter and practiced smiles, not conducive to true discovery. Elara found herself nodding. I prefer the quiet. Then allow me to offer you a reprieve. He gestured subtly with his head towards a darkened archway at the far end of the room. Lord Ashworth has a private study, rarely used by guests. It's filled with first editions and maps, curiosities and secrets. And I assure you, it is far more conducive to discovery. A flicker of hesitation. Her professional training screamed caution. But the magnetic pull of his gaze, the promise in his voice, and the sheer allure of a private study filled with unknown wonders, was too strong to resist. I shouldn't, she began, then stopped. But, if it's truly private. His smile deepened, a flash of white teeth in the dim light. Utterly. Follow me. He moved with an almost silent grace, leading her away from the hushed gathering. The air seemed to shift around them, becoming heavier, charged with unspoken possibility. As they passed through the archway, the soft murmur of voices from the drawing room faded, replaced by the profound quiet of the manor's deeper recesses. The corridor they entered was darker, lined with heavy tapestries depicting forgotten hunts and mythological beasts. The scent of old leather and beeswax grew stronger. Elara found herself walking closer to him than she normally would a stranger, drawn by his presence, by the subtle warmth radiating from him. She noticed the way his dark hair brushed against the collar of his shirt, the elegant line of his jaw. There was an artistry to his very being, a curated wildness that intrigued her deeply. He stopped before a massive carved oak door, its surface worn smooth by centuries of hands. Without a word, he produced a small ornate key from an inner pocket, its silver glinting in the faint light. The lock turned with a soft, resonant click that echoed in the silence. He pushed the door open, revealing a room plunged into near darkness, save for the sliver of moonlight filtering through a tall, arched window. After you, Elara. Stepping inside felt like entering another world. The air was thick with the rich, intoxicating aroma of old books, pipe tobacco, and something uniquely Vel. The room was vast, lined from floor to ceiling with shelves overflowing with leather-bound volumes, their spines a kaleidoscope of faded colors. A grand desk dominated the center, cluttered with ancient maps, quills, and a half-empty decanter of amber liquid. A roaring fire crackled merrily in a stone hearth, casting dancing shadows across the room and painting the scene in hues of gold and crimson. Vel moved past her, his hand brushing lightly against the small of her back as he walked to the desk. The touch was fleeting, yet it left a trail of fire. He lit a series of lamps, their soft glow illuminating the room with a warm, inviting light. The study was more magnificent than anything she could have imagined. It was a scholar's dream, a collector's paradise, a sanctuary of knowledge and hidden beauty. This is Incredible, she breathed, her gaze sweeping over the shelves, recognizing first editions, rare atlases, and what looked like genuine ancient scrolls. She felt an almost visceral hunger, a yearning to lose herself in these treasures. "I thought you might appreciate it," Vel said, his voice softer now, imbued with a quiet satisfaction. He moved to a small cabinet and poured 2 glasses of a dark, rich liquid. Armagnac, from a very old cask. It has stories of its own, if you listen closely. He handed her a delicate crystal glass. Its warmth seeped into her fingers, the scent of aged fruit and oak rising to meet her. She took a tentative sip. It was smooth, fiery, and deeply comforting. "Thank you." "The stories," he raised his glass, his eyes twinkling in the firelight. "Both written and unwritten." She clinked her glass against his, the sound a soft bell in the quiet room. 2 stories. They stood for a moment in comfortable silence, the fire crackling, the rich scent of the room enveloping them. Elara felt a peculiar sense of belonging, an unexpected ease in his presence. It was as if she had always known this room, this man, this moment. "You mentioned you work with lost languages," Vel said, breaking the silence, his voice a low rumble. "Tell me, Elara, what is the most beautiful language you have ever encountered that is no longer spoken?" She smiled, a genuine unbidden smile that reached her eyes. This was her element, her passion. "There are so many, but perhaps the most hauntingly beautiful is one I've only ever found fragments of, the dialect of the ancient Lyre. It's a language woven from myth and starlight, full of elongated vowels and soft consonants, designed to be sung rather than spoken. It speaks of a deep connection to the cosmos, to the cycles of the moon and stars." He listened intently, his gaze fixed on her, his expression unreadable but utterly captivated. "Sung, you say? Can you demonstrate?" A blush crept up her cheeks. She rarely spoke of her work with such personal passion, let alone performed it. But there was something in his eyes, a genuine curiosity, that disarmed her. "It's difficult without context. But there's a fragment I often think of. A lament, I believe, for a lost constellation." She closed her eyes for a moment, gathering her thoughts, allowing the ancient sounds to coalesce in her mind. Then softly, tentatively at first, she began to hum, then to sing, a series of elongated ethereal sounds. "Ah, Lumea, Kairana, Vel Ora." Her voice, usually reserved for quiet pronouncements, took on a new quality, a haunting melodic purity. The sounds flowed from her, ancient and resonant, filling the room, weaving through the crackle of the fire and the scent of old paper. She opened her eyes, self-conscious, but found Vel still watching her, his own eyes now wide, a flicker of something intense in their amber depths. He hadn't moved, hadn't even blinked. He was utterly transfixed. When she finished, the silence that followed was profound, broken only by the gentle hiss of the burning logs. "Vel Ora," he repeated, his voice barely a whisper, a strange inflection in the word, as if he tasted it. "That is truly remarkable, Elara. You do not merely translate, you resurrect." The compliment, delivered with such sincerity and depth, sent a warmth through her that had nothing to do with the Armagnac. She felt seen, truly seen, for perhaps the first time in a long while. "It's a privilege to give voice to the voiceless," she said, her own voice still a little tremulous from the effort. He took a step closer, his gaze never leaving hers. "A privilege you wield with extraordinary grace." He reached out, his long fingers gently lifting a stray strand of hair from her face, tucking it behind her ear. His touch was feather-light, yet it sent a jolt through her, a ripple of sensation that made her breath catch in her throat. His thumb lingered for a moment, brushing the sensitive skin behind her earlobe, sending shivers down her neck. "You have a gift, Elara Vance," he murmured, his voice a low thrum that vibrated through her very bones. His eyes were no longer merely curious, but held a burning intensity, a silent promise of something profound. "A gift for revealing hidden beauty, a gift I find utterly captivating. His face was so close now, she could feel the warmth of his breath on her cheek, smell the intoxicating blend of sandalwood and something uniquely him. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a wild bird trapped in a cage. Every instinct told her to step back, to maintain her professional distance, but her body refused to obey. Instead, she found herself leaning in, drawn by an irresistible force, by the raw magnetism that pulsed between them. His gaze dropped to her lips, lingering there, a silent question hanging in the charged air. The world outside the study, the polite gathering, her entire carefully constructed life of academic detachment, seemed to recede, leaving only the two of them, bathed in firelight and the scent of ancient stories. The tension in the room was a palpable thing, a taut string vibrating with unspoken desires. "Vel," she whispered, her voice barely audible, a plea and a question wrapped into one. He didn't answer with words. Instead, his hand slid from behind her ear, down her neck, his thumb tracing the delicate curve of her jawline. His touch was exquisite, deliberate, igniting a trail of fire wherever it landed. He leaned in further, his head tilting, his amber eyes still locked with hers, searching, questioning, promising. She closed her eyes, anticipation a burning ember in her chest. She felt the brush of his lips, soft and hesitant at first, a mere suggestion. Then, with a low groan that seemed to rise from the depths of him, he deepened the kiss, his mouth claiming hers with a tender intensity that stole her breath. It was a kiss that tasted of aged armagnac and forgotten dreams, of ancient secrets and burgeoning desires. His lips were soft yet firm, moving against hers with a practiced artistry that left her reeling. She felt herself melt into him, her hands instinctively reaching up, finding purchase on the lapels of his suit jacket, clutching the fine fabric, as if to steady herself against the intoxicating rush. He pulled her closer, his other arm wrapping around her waist, drawing her against the lean, hard planes of his body. The contact was electric, a jolt of pure sensation. She could feel the solid warmth of his chest against hers, the rapid beat of his heart mirroring her own. His scent enveloped her, intoxicating and addictive. The kiss deepened still, becoming more demanding, more hungry. His tongue traced the seam of her lips, a silent invitation, and she parted them, a soft moan escaping her throat as he explored the soft recesses of her mouth. It was a kiss that promised everything and nothing, a tempest of sensation that threatened to sweep away her every inhibition, every carefully erected barrier. She was lost, utterly lost, in the intoxicating swirl of his touch, his taste, his potent presence. His fingers tightened on her waist, pressing her flush against him, leaving no doubt as to the effect she had on him. A delicious heat loomed low in her belly, spreading outwards, making her ache with a longing she hadn't known she possessed. His lips finally broke from hers, leaving her breathless and dazed. But he didn't pull away completely. His forehead rested against hers, his breath ragged against her skin. His thumb continued to stroke her jaw, a silent comfort, a lingering promise. "Elara," he whispered again, his voice thick with emotion, his eyes still closed. "You are more than just starlight, you are a constellation." She kept her eyes closed, savoring the moment, the lingering taste of him on her lips, the exquisite tenderness of his touch. She felt as if she had been stripped bare, her very soul laid open to his gaze. And yet, she felt no fear, only an exhilarating sense of wonder. This man, Vel, had seen her, truly seen her, and responded in a way that resonated with the deepest parts of her being. When she finally opened her eyes, his amber gaze was already upon her, deep and unblinking, filled with a primal hunger that sent another shiver through her. A silent question hung between them, a profound understanding that transcended words. The fire crackled, casting long dancing shadows that seemed to entwine with their forms. The ancient books stood silent witness, their stories waiting to be told, just as hers was only just beginning. His gaze was a current, pulling her deeper into an ocean she hadn't known existed. It wasn't just desire, it was recognition, an ancient echo answering a call she hadn't consciously made. The air in the cabin thickened, charged with unspoken truths, and the raw electricity of two souls colliding. Her breath hitched, a soft sound lost in the crackle of the fire and the insistent drumming of rain against the window panes. He moved first, a slow, deliberate shift that held the gravitas of a predator stalking its prey, yet imbued with a tenderness that disarmed her completely. His hand, the one that had so gently held hers, now lifted, palm open, offering. It hovered between them, a silent invitation, a promise whispered without words. Her own hand, trembling slightly, rose to meet it. The moment their fingertips brushed, a jolt, not entirely unfamiliar, but infinitely more potent, shot through her. It was as if the very air between them ignited, a silent explosion of latent energy. His fingers, long and strong, wove through hers, a perfect fit she instinctively recognized. The warmth of his skin seeped into hers, spreading like a slow burning ember up her arm, through her chest, settling deep within her core. He didn't pull her closer, not yet. He simply held her hand, his thumb tracing the delicate line of her knuckles, a feather-light touch that nonetheless felt like a brand. His eyes, those mesmerizing amber pools, never left hers, communicating a narrative far older and more profound than any spoken language. She felt herself leaning in, an unconscious yielding to the magnetic pull that emanated from him. The distance between them was now a palpable thing, a taut string vibrating with anticipation. He closed the gap, not with a sudden lunge, but with a gradual, almost imperceptible shift, drawing her closer by the sheer force of his presence. Her other hand, seemingly of its own volition, lifted to rest tentatively on his chest, feeling the solid rhythm of his heart beneath her palm. It beat a steady, powerful drum, a counterpoint to the wild flutter in her own. A low growl, more a rumbling purr, resonated from deep within his chest, a sound that vibrated through her fingertips and echoed in her very bones. His head dipped slowly, inexorably, his gaze still locked with hers, a silent question in its depths. Her answer was in the slight tilt of her chin, the soft parting of her lips, the involuntary closing of her eyes as she anticipated the contact. The first brush of his lips was a whisper, soft as the falling snow outside, yet it ignited a firestorm within her. It was a tentative exploration, a gentle press that promised more, a breath shared, a silent surrender. Then he deepened it, slowly, deliberately, as if savoring every fraction of the experience. His mouth was warm, firm, exquisitely soft, tasting of wood smoke and rain and something uniquely, intoxicatingly him. Her fingers tightened on his chest, clinging, as if to anchor herself against the delicious vertigo that threatened to consume her. He kissed her with an ancient hunger, a slow, deep exploration that left her breathless and yearning for more. His hand, still intertwined with hers, lifted, bringing their joined hands to rest against her cheek, his thumb caressing her jawline, sending shivers through her skin. The other hand, strong and possessive, found the small of her back, pressing her closer until no sliver of air remained between them. Her body molded against his, a perfect fit she hadn't known she craved. The hard planes of his chest against her softer curves, the brush of his strong thighs against hers. The kiss deepened, becoming a fierce, tender dance of lips and tongues, a dialogue spoken in sighs and soft moans. She felt herself unraveling, piece by delicious piece, her carefully constructed defenses melting away under the heat of his touch, the intensity of his passion. Her fingers tangled in the soft, dark hair at the nape of his neck, pulling him closer, wanting to lose herself entirely in this intoxicating current. When he finally broke the kiss, it was with a reluctant sigh, his forehead resting against hers, their breaths mingling, ragged and sweet. His amber eyes, now smoky with desire, searched hers, as if seeking confirmation, understanding. "Mine," he murmured, his voice a low, rough rumble that vibrated through her, a primal claim that resonated with a forgotten part of her soul. It wasn't a question, but a statement of undeniable truth. A shiver, delicious and profound, coursed through her. She felt it, deep in her core. A sense of belonging she hadn't realized she'd been yearning for. "Yes," she whispered, her voice barely audible, raw with emotion. He drew back just enough to look at her, his thumbs tracing the line of her jaw, his gaze intense, possessive. He lowered his head again, not for another kiss, but to trail a path of fire along her jaw, down her throat, to the delicate hollow at its base. His lips were a brand, leaving a tingling awareness in their wake. She tilted her head back, offering him more, a silent invitation to explore. His breath, warm and moist, feathered against her skin as he murmured against her pulse point, a soft sound she couldn't quite decipher, but felt deep within her bones. It was a language older than words, a song of ancient longing. His hands moved, slowly, deliberately from her back, tracing the curve of her spine, sending delicious tremors through her. He paused at the delicate lace of her camisole, his fingers brushing against the thin fabric, a silent question. Her own hands, still tangled in his hair, slid down to rest on his shoulders, feeling the powerful muscles flex beneath her touch. She could feel the heat radiating from him, a warmth that promised to chase away the last vestiges of the storm's chill. She nodded, a subtle movement, but he understood. With a slowness that was both exquisite torture and profound reverence, he began to unfasten the small buttons of her silk camisole. Each touch of his fingers against the fabric, against her skin, was an electric shock, sending waves of anticipation through her. The silk parted, revealing the pale curve of her collarbone, the delicate swell of her breast above the lace of her bra. His gaze followed the path of his hands, dark and hungry, yet filled with an undeniable reverence. He pushed the silk straps down her shoulders, letting the garment fall away like a discarded whisper. The cool air of the cabin, in stark contrast to the heat radiating from his body, kissed her bared skin, sending a delicious shiver through her. She stood before him, vulnerable yet emboldened, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. His eyes in the flickering firelight seemed to glow with an inner intensity, reflecting the primal beauty he found in her. He reached out, his fingers trembling ever so slightly, and traced the line of her collarbone, down to the edge of her lace bra. The delicate fabric offered little resistance to his touch, and soon with a soft caress, he released the clasp, letting the cups fall away. Her breasts, full and aching, were now exposed to his hungry gaze. A blush, hot and undeniable, spread across her chest. But she met his eyes, refusing to look away. There was no shame, only a burgeoning desire that mirrored his own. He lowered his head, his breath warm against her skin, and she gasped as his lips found the sensitive curve of her breast, a soft, worshipful kiss that sent a wave of pure sensation through her. He suckled gently, then more firmly, drawing a soft moan from her lips. Her fingers tightened on his shoulders, her head falling back as she arched into his touch, lost in the exquisite pleasure. His tongue, warm and wet, teased her nipple, sending sparks of fire through every nerve ending. He moved from one breast to the other, lavishing attention on each, driving her further into a delicious haze of sensation. Her own hands, restless with longing, found the hem of his shirt. With a silent plea, she began to pull it free from his trousers, her fingers brushing against the warm skin of his lower back. He seemed to read her unspoken desire, and with a low growl, he pulled away from her breast, just enough to shed the garment. The soft cotton whispered to the floor, revealing the taut expanse of his chest, broad shoulders, and the sculpted planes of his abdomen. He was magnificent. The firelight danced across the lean muscle, highlighting the strength and power held within his frame. A smattering of dark hair dusted his chest, disappearing into the waistband of his trousers. She reached out, her fingers hesitant at first, then bolder, tracing the lines of his pectorals, feeling the warmth and resilience of his skin. The subtle scent of him, an intoxicating blend of wild earth, ancient spice, and something uniquely masculine, enveloped her, drawing her deeper into his spell. He watched her, his eyes dark with a primal intensity, allowing her to explore. Her touch seemed to ignite a fire within him too, a subtle tremor passing through his body as her fingers drifted lower, tracing the firm line of his ribs, the dip of his navel. With a sound that was half sigh, half groan, he captured her mouth once more, a kiss of desperate hunger, of profound connection. His hands, now free, roamed her body, leaving a trail of fire in their wake. They found the waistband of her skirt, his fingers deft as he unbuttoned it, the fabric rustling softly as it joined her camisole on the floor. She stood before him now in only her delicate lace briefs, feeling the cool air against her bare thighs, the rising heat of his body, an almost unbearable contrast. He stepped back, just a pace, his eyes devouring her form, a silent appreciation that made her feel beautiful, desired beyond measure. He knelt, slowly, his gaze never leaving hers, and she felt a delicious shiver course through her as his hands rested gently on her hips. He leaned forward, his lips brushing against the soft skin of her inner thigh, sending a jolt of pure sensation straight to her core. Her breath hitched, a gasp trapped in her throat. His touch was reverent, tender, yet filled with an undeniable promise of deeper intimacy. He traced the delicate lace of her briefs, his fingers teasing the edge, making her ache with a longing that was both exquisite and almost painful. "So beautiful," he murmured, his voice husky, his breath warm against her skin. He rose slowly, his hands sliding up her thighs, under the lace, until his palms cupped her bare bottom, lifting her slightly, pressing her intimately against him. She gasped, feeling the hard ridge of his arousal against her, a potent reminder of the raw desire that pulsed between them. Her legs wrapped instinctively around his waist, her body arching into his, seeking the profound connection he offered. He held her effortlessly, his strength undeniable, carrying her as if she weighed nothing. He began to move towards the ancient four-poster bed, his steps slow and deliberate, his eyes never leaving hers, a silent testament to the journey they were embarking on. The bed, ancient and grand, stood ready, its plush mattress and soft linens an inviting haven. He lowered her gently onto the bed, his body following hers, covering her with his warmth and weight. The soft rustle of the sheets was the only sound besides the rhythmic drumming of the rain and the frantic beat of her heart. He hovered over her, his eyes searching hers, a silent question of readiness. Her answer was in the upward curve of her hips, the desperate arch of her back, the silent plea in her gaze. He leaned down, capturing her lips once more. A deep, consuming kiss that left no room for doubt, no space for thought, only pure, unadulterated sensation. His hands were everywhere, stroking, caressing, exploring every curve and hollow of her body. He moved with an intuitive grace, knowing exactly where to touch, how to ignite the deepest embers within her. Her fingers found the belt of his trousers, fumbling slightly in her eagerness. He chuckled, a low, rich sound that vibrated against her lips, and with a swift, practiced motion he unfastened it himself, his eyes twinkling with a shared anticipation. The heavy fabric of his trousers, then his boxes, joined the pile of discarded clothes on the floor. And then he was fully against her. Skin to skin, the glorious heat of him enveloping her, pressing into her, a primal fit that transcended mere physical proximity. His body was hard, muscled, exquisitely warm, a perfect counterpoint to her softer form. He shifted, rising slightly, his eyes still locked with hers, a deep, ancient knowing in their amber depths. He moved between her thighs, slowly, deliberately, giving her time to adjust, to absorb the exquisite tension. She felt the hard, hot tip of him press against her entrance, a gentle probe that made her gasp, her body arching in invitation. "Look at me," he whispered, his voice raw, husky with desire. She met his gaze, her eyes wide, luminous, filled with a mixture of awe and profound longing. He began to move, slowly at first, a gentle press, an agonizingly slow glide. She felt herself opening, yielding, her body welcoming his in a way it never had another. A soft cry escaped her lips as he entered her, slowly, exquisitely, filling her completely. The sensation was overwhelming, an intense fullness that stretched and encompassed her, a profound connection that went beyond the physical. She wrapped her legs around his waist, pulling him deeper, wanting to absorb every inch of him. He paused, allowing her body to acclimate, his chest heaving, his eyes closed for a moment in a silent communion. Then, with a low groan, he began to move, a slow, rhythmic thrust that echoed the ancient pulse of the earth, the insistent drumming of the rain. Each stroke was a journey, a deeper immersion into a world of pure sensation. Her hips rose to meet his, instinct guiding her movements, matching his rhythm, seeking the profound release that shimmered tantalizingly on the horizon. The bed creaked softly in protest, a symphony to their ancient dance. The fire crackled, casting their entwined forms in dancing shadows, making them seem like mythical beings caught in a timeless embrace. His breath was hot against her ear, his lips brushing against her skin, as he murmured words she couldn't quite decipher, but understood with every fiber of her being. They were words of possession, of adoration, of a primal claim that resonated with the deepest, wildest parts of her. The pleasure built, a relentless, exquisite tide, washing over her, pulling her deeper into its eddy. Her senses were overwhelmed. The scent of him, the feel of his skin slick with a fine sheen of sweat against hers, the sound of their mingled breaths, the sight of his powerful form moving above her, within her. She was pure sensation, pure feeling, a vessel for an ancient, beautiful energy. Her climax approached, a shimmering wave of pure, unadulterated bliss. Her muscles tightened, her breath hitched, and a cry escaped her lips as she convulsed around him, waves of exquisite pleasure rippling through her. He groaned, a deep, guttural sound, and thrust once, twice more, his own release mirroring hers, a powerful surge that filled her completely, binding them together in a profound, primal union. They lay entwined, breathless and spent, the aftershocks of their shared release still rippling through their bodies. His weight was a comforting press, his head resting against her shoulder, his breath warm against her neck. She tangled her fingers in his damp hair, stroking the soft strands, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her chest. The rain outside had softened to a gentle patter, a soothing lullaby. The fire still cast its warm glow, painting the room in hues of orange and gold. In the quiet aftermath, a sense of profound peace settled over her, a feeling of rightness, of belonging. He stirred after a long moment, lifting his head to look at her, his amber eyes now softer, filled with a tenderness that made her heart ache. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch light, reverent. "Are you all right?" he murmured, his voice still a little rough but laced with concern. She smiled, a soft, contented curve of her lips. "More than all right," she whispered, her voice still a little shaky. "I've never felt anything like it." He returned her smile, a slow, mesmerizing curve of his lips that sent another shiver, this one of pure contentment, through her. He kissed her forehead, then her nose, then finally, a soft, lingering kiss on her lips. He shifted, carefully withdrawing from her, a slight regret in the movement, but he remained close, gathering her into his arms, pulling the thick furs up over them. She snuggled against him, her head resting on his shoulder, his arm a strong protective band around her waist. The warmth of his body was a delicious comfort, a shield against the lingering chill of the night. Sleep threatened to claim her, a heavy, sweet languor. But there was a question, still lingering, still unspoken, about him, about this place, about the profound, almost supernatural connection they had just forged. She wasn't ready to let the mystery go, not yet. She traced the strong line of his jaw with her fingertip. "Who are you?" she whispered, the question barely audible. He tensed slightly, a subtle shift in the muscles beneath her hand. He didn't answer immediately, and for a moment, she thought he wouldn't. Then, he exhaled slowly, a long, thoughtful breath. "My name," he began, his voice a low rumble in the quiet of the cabin, "is Elias. But that is only a name. What I gone, that is a longer story, a story that is perhaps intertwined with yours now." His words hung in the air, heavy with implication, deepening the mystery rather than unraveling it. Elias. The name suited him, ancient yet strong. She felt a thrill of both apprehension and excitement. A longer story, intertwined with hers. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. She knew with an instinctual certainty that this night, this cabin, this man, had irrevocably altered the course of her life. She lifted her head, meeting his gaze. His amber eyes held a depth she couldn't fathom, a wisdom that spoke of centuries, not mere years. There was a gentle warning there, too, a silent question about whether she was truly ready to delve into the depths of what he was. "Tell me," she breathed, her voice firm and resolute. "Tell me everything." He looked at her for a long moment, a slow smile spreading across his lips, a smile that held both ancient sorrow and profound affection. He pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Not tonight, little firefly," he murmured, his voice softening. "Tonight is for rest, for dreaming, for letting the echoes of what we've shared settle in your soul. But tomorrow, when the sun rises and the world outside remembers its light, I will begin to tell you. And then, perhaps, you will understand why our paths were destined to cross in this forgotten place." He held her closer, his embrace firm and protective. She felt the steady beat of his heart, the warmth of his skin, the gentle rise and fall of his chest beneath her ear. The rain outside had indeed become a mere whisper, a backdrop to the profound silence that had fallen between them, a silence filled with unspoken promises and the gentle hum of discovery. She closed her eyes, utterly content, and for the first time in a very long time, felt truly safe, truly seen. The ancient books stood silent witness, their stories waiting to be told, just as hers, and Elias's, were only just beginning. The ancient books stood silent witness, their stories waiting to be told, just as hers, and Elias's, were only just beginning. She felt the slow, steady rhythm of his heart against her ear, a comforting drumbeat that resonated deep within her own chest. Her fingers, still curled loosely around the fabric of his shirt, flexed almost imperceptibly, savoring the warmth that radiated from him. The profound silence between them wasn't empty. It was a vast, resonant space filled with the echoes of their shared vulnerability, the trembling recognition of something extraordinary. She didn't want to move, didn't want to break the spell, yet a tiny, insistent voice in the back of her mind whispered about the impropriety, the sudden intimacy, the delicate balance that could so easily shatter. Elias stirred, a soft sigh escaping his lips that tickled her hair. His arm, which had been a solid anchor around her, loosened slightly, then tightened again, as if he too was reluctant to let go. She felt the subtle shift of his weight as he adjusted, and a quiet, almost imperceptible groan rumbled in his chest. A sound of deep contentment, perhaps, or a gentle acknowledgement of the uncomfortable position they'd found themselves in on the floor. Slowly, she lifted her head, her gaze meeting his. His eyes, the color of deep amber in the dim firelight, held a warmth that melted away her lingering hesitation. There was no judgment, no surprise, only a quiet, profound understanding that mirrored her own bewildered heart. A faint smile, soft and tender, touched the corners of his lips, and she felt a corresponding flutter in her own chest. "Are you comfortable?" he asked, his voice a low murmur barely disturbing the quiet. It was a simple question, yet it carried an unspoken depth, an invitation to stay, or to shift, entirely at her discretion. She managed a small, slightly breathless laugh. "As comfortable as one can be on an antique rug after pouring out one's soul," she admitted, her voice equally soft. She felt a blush creep up her neck, but instead of embarrassment, there was a strange sense of liberation. She had shown him a part of herself she usually kept fiercely guarded, and he had met it with kindness, with acceptance. Elias chuckled, a rich, resonant sound that vibrated through her. "Perhaps we should find a more suitable spot, then." He didn't immediately release her, though. His gaze remained locked with hers, a silent conversation passing between them. The air thrummed with unspoken words, with the weight of possibility. His thumb, still resting gently on her back, began to trace slow, deliberate circles, a feather-light touch that sent shivers dancing down her spine. It was an innocent gesture, yet laden with a tenderness that made her breath catch. "Yes?" she whispered, her voice a little shaky. "Perhaps." He finally released his embrace, though his hand lingered on her arm for a moment longer than necessary as she pushed herself up, feeling a strange mixture of reluctance and anticipation. The warmth of his skin seemed to imprint itself on hers, a phantom touch that lingered even after they had created a small space between them. She knelt on the rug, facing him, the firelight casting long dancing shadows across their faces. The rain outside had indeed become a distant whisper, a lullaby against the windows. But the crackle and hiss of the fire were now the dominant sounds, a companion to the intense quiet that had returned. She noticed the way the firelight caught the subtle gold threads in his dark hair, the strong line of his jaw, the faint stubble that softened his chin. He looked rugged, untamed, yet his eyes held an astonishing gentleness. "Are you all right?" he asked again, his brow furrowing slightly, concern etched into his features. She nodded, a genuine smile finally gracing her lips. "More than all right. Thank you, Elias. For listening. For understanding." He returned her smile, a slow, heart-stopping curve of his lips. "There was nothing to understand that wasn't already clear in your eyes, even before you spoke, and it was no burden to listen. It was a privilege." His words, simple yet profound, wrapped around her heart like a warm embrace. She felt her defenses, which had been so formidable for so long, begin to crumble, leaving her feeling vulnerable yet incredibly alive. The scent of old paper, rain-soaked earth, and something uniquely Elias, a subtle spice, a hint of wood smoke, filled her senses, creating an intoxicating cocktail that made her head feel light. She reached out, almost involuntarily, her hand hovering for a moment before she let it settle gently on his forearm. His skin was warm and firm beneath her touch. A jolt, soft yet undeniable, passed between them. His gaze dropped to where her hand rested, then lifted back to her eyes, a question in their depths. "You have a kind heart, Elias," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He covered her hand with his own, his fingers strong and warm, sending a wave of heat through her. "And you, a resilient spirit." His thumb began to stroke the back of her hand, a slow hypnotic rhythm that sent a delicious tremor through her. "A spirit that deserves to be cherished, not broken." Her breath hitched. The words were simple, yet they resonated with a truth she hadn't dared to acknowledge in years. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, but these were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of release, of profound relief. She leaned into his touch, a silent acknowledgement of the comfort and solace he offered. "Come," he said, his voice husky. "Let's get you off this floor." He rose with an easy grace, still holding her hand, and drew her gently to her feet. The sudden proximity, the warmth of his body so close to hers, sent a dizzying rush through her. She swayed for a moment, not from unsteadiness, but from the sheer intensity of the moment, the magnetic pull between them. He led her to a large, plush velvet armchair near the fire, its deep cushions inviting. It looked like it had been designed for two, sprawling and luxurious. "Here," he murmured, his hand still holding hers, his thumb still stroking. "Better." She sank into the soft velvet, the warmth of the fire now directly on her face. He didn't immediately sit in the chair beside her. Instead, he knelt before her, one knee resting on the thick rug, his other arm resting on the armrest of her chair, effectively framing her, his presence utterly encompassing. His gaze, intense and unwavering, held hers captive. "You are a remarkable woman," he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the very air around them. "And I find myself utterly captivated." Her heart hammered against her ribs. The directness of his words, the raw honesty in his eyes stole her breath. She had been admired before, desired even, but never had it felt so profound, so unreal. It wasn't just physical attraction, it was a recognition of her soul, a connection that went deeper than words. "Elias," she began, her voice trailing off, unsure what to say. The air was thick with unspoken longing, with a tension that was both exquisite and terrifying. He leaned closer, his eyes searching hers, his gaze dropping briefly to her lips, then back to her eyes. "May I?" he whispered. The question a soft plea, an invitation, a request for permission that resonated with deep respect. She didn't need to ask what he meant. Her entire being was humming with anticipation, with a longing that had been dormant for too long, now awakened by his presence, his quiet strength, his tender understanding. She simply nodded, a slight, almost imperceptible movement. But it was enough. He closed the small distance between them, slowly, deliberately. She watched his eyes, saw the flicker of desire, the tenderness that still dominated. His hand, which had been resting on her arm, now moved, his fingers gently curving around her jawline, his thumb stroking the soft skin just beneath her ear. His touch was feather-light, yet it sent a cascade of shivers through her. His face was close now, so close she could feel the warmth of his breath on her lips, smell the faint, clean scent of his skin, mingled with the subtle hint of old books and wood smoke. Her eyelids fluttered, then closed, anticipation a burning ember in her chest. She felt the soft brush of his lips against hers, a tentative, exploratory touch that was almost a question. Her own lips parted slightly in response, an unspoken invitation. He deepened the kiss, slowly, gently, as if testing the waters, savoring the moment. It was soft, tender, a kiss of profound connection rather than urgent passion, a promise of what was to come. Then, as if a dam had broken, a rush of pure, unadulterated longing surged through her. She leaned into him, her hands rising to cup his face, her fingers tangling in the soft hair at his nape. His kiss deepened, becoming more insistent, more passionate, yet still utterly tender. His lips moved expertly against hers, a slow, intoxicating dance that ignited every nerve ending in her body. A soft moan escaped her throat, a sound she barely recognized as her own, and he groaned in response, a low, guttural sound that vibrated against her lips. His hand left her jaw, moving to cup the back of her head, his fingers threading through her hair, holding her firmly as their kiss deepened further, becoming a hungry, desperate exploration. She tasted him, a clean, warm taste, mingled with something uniquely masculine and utterly intoxicating. Her body hummed, a low, constant thrum of awakening desire. It had been so long since she had felt such a profound connection, such a potent physical and emotional pull. She felt herself melting into him, into the kiss, into the moment, surrendering to the overwhelming sensations that coursed through her. His other hand, which had been resting on her arm, now moved, slowly, deliberately, down her side, coming to rest gently on her waist. His touch was warm, firm, possessive, sending a fresh wave of heat through her. She arched into his touch, a silent invitation for him to draw her closer. He shifted, rising slightly from his kneeling position, and then with an almost effortless grace, he moved into the armchair with her. She found herself cradled against his chest, her legs tangling with his, her body pressed intimately against his hard, masculine form. The velvet cushions enveloped them, creating a private, secluded world within the vast library. Their kiss broke, leaving her breathless, her lips swollen and tingling. She rested her forehead against his, both of them panting softly, the air around them thick with unspoken desire. His fingers were still tangled in her hair, his thumbs stroking the sensitive skin behind her ear. "You feel incredible," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion, his breath warm against her cheek. She shivered at his words, a delicious tremor that coursed through her. "So do you, Elias," she confessed, her voice equally breathless. She could feel the hard plane of his chest against her breasts, the muscular expanse of his thighs against hers. The scent of him enveloped her, a potent aphrodisiac that made her head swim, His hand, which had been on her waist, now began to move, slowly, sensuously, upwards. It brushed against the curve of her hip, then traced the line of her ribs, sending a trail of fire in its wake. She held her breath, her entire being focused on the exquisite sensation of his touch. His fingers paused just beneath her breast, his thumb brushing lightly against the sensitive skin there, a feather-light touch that promised so much more. A soft gasp escaped her lips, and she arched into his touch, her eyes fluttering closed. She felt the insistent throb between her legs, a deep, aching need that had been dormant for far too long. He continued his slow, tantalizing exploration, his fingers tracing the delicate lace of her camisole, never quite touching her skin directly, yet the heat of his hand burned through the fabric. "You're exquisite," he murmured, his voice a low growl, his lips brushing against her temple, then moving to her jawline, peppering soft kisses along the delicate skin there. "Every inch of you." She could feel the insistent hardness of him pressing against her thigh, a potent reminder of his own escalating desire. Her own body responded with an eager readiness, a deep, yearning ache that demanded satisfaction. She wanted to feel his skin against hers, to shed the layers that separated them. Her hands, which had been tangled in his hair, now slid down, tracing the strong line of his neck, then resting on his shoulders. She felt the hard planes of his muscles beneath her fingers, the sheer power contained within him. She yearned to feel more, to explore the landscape of his body, just as he was exploring hers. "Elias," she whispered, her voice a plea, a question, an invitation. He pulled back slightly, just enough to look into her eyes, his own eyes dark with desire, yet still holding that deep, tender understanding. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice low and serious, his gaze searching hers. "There's no rush, no expectation, only what you want, what you're ready for." His consideration, his respect, touched her deeply, even in the throes of such potent desire. It only made her want him more, made her trust him more completely. She saw the question in his eyes, the genuine care, and her answer was immediate, unequivocal. She reached up, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw, then cupped his face, pulling him closer. "Yes," she breathed, her voice firm, resolute. "Yes, I am sure. I want you, Elias. I want you." A flicker of raw, unadulterated relief and joy crossed his face, and then his lips were on hers again, this time with an urgent hunger that matched her own. The kiss was deep, consuming, a fiery dance that left her breathless and trembling. His hand, no longer content with merely brushing, now slipped beneath the hem of her camisole, his fingers finally making contact with her bare skin. The shock of his warm touch against her bare ribs sent a gasp through her, and she arched into him, pressing herself closer, desperate for more. His fingers were warm, surprisingly gentle, as they traced the curve of her waist, then slowly, deliberately, began to move upwards, towards the swell of her breast. She felt the tantalizing brush of his fingertips against the underside of her breast, then the soft, yielding flesh filling his palm. A moan escaped her, a sound of pure pleasure, as his thumb brushed against the engorged nipple, sending a jolt of exquisite sensation through her entire being. She pressed harder against him, her own hands now sliding under his shirt, desperate to feel his skin, to connect with him on a deeper, more primal level. His skin was warm, smooth, and incredibly firm beneath her fingertips. She reveled in the feel of his defined muscles, the breadth of his shoulders, the strength of his back. Her fingers explored the landscape of his torso, tracing the line of his spine, the subtle curve of his ribs. With a soft groan, Elias broke the kiss, his lips moving to her neck, showering soft, tender kisses along her jawline, down to the sensitive skin beneath her ear, sending delicious shivers through her. "You are intoxicating," he whispered, his voice thick with desire, his breath hot against her skin. "Absolutely intoxicating." His hand continued its slow, tantalizing caress, his thumb now teasing her nipple through the thin fabric of her camisole, sending waves of pleasure through her. Her body was a symphony of sensation, every nerve ending alive and humming. The world outside the library, the rain, the lingering shadows, all faded into insignificance. There was only Elias, only his touch, his scent, his presence. She pulled back slightly, her eyes still heavy-lidded with desire, and looked at him. The firelight danced in his dark eyes, reflecting the fierce longing that burned within them. She reached up, her fingers fumbling slightly with the buttons of his shirt, her desire to feel his bare skin now an overwhelming need. He chuckled softly, a low, rumbling sound that vibrated against her. "Eager, are we?" he teased. But there was no judgment in his voice, only affection and a shared hunger. He helped her with the buttons, his long fingers deftly undoing them one by one, his gaze never leaving hers. When the shirt was finally open, she pushed it from his shoulders, her fingers tracing the broad expanse of his chest. His skin was warm and smooth, lightly dusted with dark hair that narrowed to a line down his abdomen. She leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to his collarbone, then to the warm skin of his chest, inhaling his unique scent, a blend of clean musk and the subtle spice she had noticed earlier. He groaned, his body arching into hers, his fingers gently urging her camisole upwards. She understood his unspoken request, and with a soft sigh of anticipation, she lifted her arms, allowing him to pull the delicate fabric over her head, casting it aside onto the velvet chair. Now, she was bare to the waist, her breasts swelling, her nipples peaked and aching for his touch. She felt a flicker of vulnerability, a ghost of her past insecurities, but it was quickly overshadowed by the fierce, possessive gaze in Elias's eyes, the sheer adoration that radiated from him. "Beautiful," he breathed, his voice thick with reverence. His eyes devoured her. Then his gaze rose to meet hers, a silent question passing between them. He reached out, his hands cupping her breasts, his thumbs brushing lightly over her nipples, sending a jolt of pure pleasure through her. She gasped, her head falling back against the chair, her body arching into his touch, a silent testament to the intensity of her desire. He leaned down, his mouth closing over one engorged nipple, drawing her in with a soft, gentle suction. A wave of exquisite sensation washed over her, making her toes curl, her fingers clench in the fabric of his discarded shirt. His tongue flicked, teased, suckled, sending currents of pleasure through her that pooled deep between her legs. She whimpered, her hands tangling in his hair, holding him closer, urging him on. He moved to the other breast, lavishing the same exquisite attention, his mouth hot and wet, his touch utterly intoxicating. She was lost in the sensation, in the swirl of pleasure and desire that consumed her. All thoughts of the outside world, of her past, of her reservations, had vanished, replaced by the raw primal need that Elias had awakened within her. She felt truly seen, truly desired, utterly cherished. He lifted his head, his eyes dark with a hunger that mirrored her own. "I want to feel you," he whispered, his voice husky. "All of you." His gaze dropped to the remaining barrier between them, her silk skirt. She nodded, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "Yes," she whispered back. "Please." He shifted again, his strong hands moving to the waistband of her skirt, his fingers deft as he unfastened the button, then slowly, deliberately, began to pull down the zipper. The silk slid down her hips, pooling around her thighs, then on the rug. He then reached for the delicate lace of her underwear. His fingers teasing the elastic. His gaze still locked with hers. A silent question. "Yes," she breathed again, her voice barely audible, her body trembling with anticipation. He eased the lace down, his fingers brushing against the sensitive skin of her inner thighs, sending a fresh wave of heat through her. The cool air of the library brushed against her now exposed skin, a stark contrast to the burning heat that raged within her. She was utterly bare, utterly vulnerable, yet felt nothing but an overwhelming sense of liberation, of readiness. Elias's eyes, dark and heavy-lidded with desire, devoured her, lingering on the intimate curve of her femininity, the soft tangle of curls. He reached out, his fingers tracing the delicate line of her inner thigh, sending a jolt of pure electricity through her. "Beautiful," he murmured again, his voice rough with emotion. He leaned in, his lips brushing against her forehead, then her temple, then down to her neck. "So incredibly beautiful." She wrapped her legs around his, drawing him even closer, her body aching for the feel of his against hers. The rough fabric of his trousers was still between them, a final barrier she desperately wanted removed. She began to fumble with his belt buckle, her fingers trembling with urgency. He chuckled softly, a low, guttural sound, and covered her hands with his own, stopping her. His eyes met hers, a mischievous glint in their depths, yet still tender. "Patience, my love," he whispered, his breath warm against her lips. "Let's savor this, every delicious moment." He slowly, deliberately unbuckled his belt, then unzipped his trousers. She watched, mesmerized, as he peeled away the fabric, revealing the hard, insistent length of him, already thick and ready for her. A gasp escaped her lips, her eyes widening slightly at the sight. He was magnificent, a testament to raw, untamed masculinity. He shucked his trousers and underwear with a swift movement, then turned his full attention back to her. He was utterly naked now, his body a masterpiece of sculpted muscle and raw power, glowing in the soft firelight. She drank him in, her gaze tracing the broad shoulders, the defined chest, the flat planes of his abdomen, down to the powerful thighs, and the glorious, potent evidence of his desire. He moved back into the armchair with her, settling his weight carefully, gently, between her legs. The feel of his bare skin against hers was an electric shock, a sensation that made her gasp with pleasure. The heat of his body enveloped her, his hard chest against her soft breasts, his hips pressed intimately against hers. His hands cupped her face, his thumbs stroking her cheekbones. His eyes, dark with a potent mixture of desire and tenderness, held hers captive. "Are you ready for me?" he whispered, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through her very core. She nodded, her eyes wide, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. "Yes, Elias. More than ready." He leaned in, kissing her deeply, passionately, a kiss that conveyed all the longing, all the tenderness, all the raw hunger that had been building between them. As their lips melded, he shifted, slowly, deliberately, pressing the head of his aroused shaft against her entrance. A gasp tore from her throat, a mixture of anticipation and pleasure. She felt the exquisite pressure, the promise of fullness, the undeniable truth of their connection. Her body instinctively arched upwards, meeting his pressure, urging him deeper. He paused, his eyes locked with hers, his gaze asking for final permission, final invitation. She met his gaze, her eyes shining with unshed tears of pure emotion, and she nodded, a fervent, desperate nod. "Yes," she whispered, "please." With a soft groan, Elias began to ease himself into her, slowly, carefully, giving her time to adjust, to stretch, to receive him. She felt the exquisite pressure as he began to fill her, inch by agonizing inch, a sensation so profound, so utterly overwhelming, that tears finally spilled from her eyes. Tears of pure, unadulterated joy. She wrapped her legs tighter around his waist, drawing him in, wanting to be completely, utterly consumed by him. He was a perfect fit, a missing piece she hadn't known she was searching for. The feeling of being completely filled, completely connected to him, was unlike anything she had ever experienced. He paused when he was fully embedded within her, his body trembling slightly, his eyes closed for a moment as he savored the profound intimacy of their connection. His forehead rested against hers, their breaths mingling, their hearts beating in a frantic shared rhythm. "You feel incredible," he rasped, his voice raw with emotion. "Absolutely incredible." She could only whimper in response, clutching at his shoulders, her fingers digging into the hard muscle. The world had narrowed to this moment, to this man, to this exquisite sensation of being utterly, completely one with him. The fire crackled in the hearth, a silent witness to their unfolding passion, and the rain outside continued its gentle whisper, a lullaby accompanying their intimate dance. She closed her eyes, utterly content, utterly safe, utterly seen, her story, and Elias's, now irrevocably intertwined, only just beginning to truly unfold. The journey, she knew, was far from over. She felt his release, a deep, shuddering sigh that rippled through her own body, a perfect echo to her own profound climax. He held her impossibly close, his breath warm against her temple, their bodies slick with the delicious sheen of effort and desire. The world spun, then settled into a soft golden hum. Her legs, still wrapped around his waist, felt heavy and pliant, and his weight, once an insistent pressure, was now a comforting blanket, anchoring her to the earth, to him. He kissed her hair, then her temple, a slow, tender press that spoke volumes without a single word. She buried her face in the crook of his neck, inhaling the intoxicating scent of him. A mix of wood smoke, rain, and his unique male musk. A soft sigh escaped her lips, a sound of pure, unadulterated contentment. "Elias," she whispered, the name a warm breath against his skin, a soft prayer. He shifted slightly, just enough to tilt her chin with his finger, his eyes dark and heavy-lidded, meeting hers. In their depths, she saw not just the lingering embers of passion, but a profound tenderness, a vulnerability that mirrored her own. "Amelia," he murmured, his voice husky, thick with emotion. He didn't need to say more. The unspoken words hung in the air between them, resonant and clear. "I see you. I want you. I cherish you." He gently withdrew, but only partially. His body still spooned intimately against hers, his hand resting possessively on her hip. She felt the rhythmic thrum of his heart against her back, a steady, soothing drumbeat. The fire continued its cheerful dance, casting flickering shadows across the room, painting their entwined forms in shades of amber and rose. The rain, a constant companion, now seemed to lull them, a soft percussion against the window pane, a gentle benediction. She felt a wave of calm wash over her, a peace deeper than any she had known. Her muscles, once taut with anticipation, were now deliciously heavy, replete. Every nerve ending sang with a quiet joy. She traced the line of his arm with her fingertips, feeling the smooth skin over lean muscle. This wasn't just physical release. It was a soul-deep communion, a recognition of spirits that had, perhaps, been searching for each other for a very long time. He pulled the heavy quilt higher, tucking it around them both, a silent gesture of care that warmed her more than the flames in the hearth. "Are you comfortable?" he whispered, his lips brushing the sensitive skin behind her ear. "More than," she breathed, leaning back into him, letting his solid presence envelop her. "Utterly." A soft chuckle rumbled in his chest, vibrating through her. "Good." He shifted again, finding a new way to hold her even closer, as if to absorb her entirely into himself. His hand moved from her hip to her stomach, his thumb gently stroking her skin, a feather-light touch that sent shivers of pleasure through her, a reminder of the exquisite intimacy they had just shared. She closed her eyes again, letting the sensations wash over her. The warmth of his body, the gentle rise and fall of his chest against her back, the rhythmic caress of his thumb. She felt utterly safe, utterly cherished. The fears and uncertainties that had once shadowed her life seemed to dissolve in the radiant glow of this moment, replaced by a profound sense of belonging, a quiet certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The journey, she knew, was far from over, but the first glorious steps had been taken. This night, this cabin, this man. They had wove a new beginning, a tapestry rich with promise and passion. As the fire slowly dwindled to embers, and the rain settled into a soft, steady patter, Amelia felt herself drifting, not just into sleep, but into a future she now knew would be filled with warmth, love, and the exquisite joy of being truly deeply seen. With Elias's arm a comforting weight across her, she finally let go, carried away on a tide of perfect contentment, her heart brimming with a quiet, shimmering hope for all the beautiful chapters yet to come.